Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is episode number 149, dedicated to a team who on November 5th, 1967, won their first NFL game when they beat the Philadelphia Eagles 31-24. The New Orleans Saints. And as always, thank you for listening and downloading to another episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we have Miss Grace Raynor, Clemson football beat writer for The Athletic, coming on helping us properly prepare for the biggest matchup of the weekend. Those of you in SEC country will disagree with some of you, that is, will disagree with that statement. You guys are all saying Florida and Georgia in Jacksonville, the world's largest cocktail party. That is the biggest game of the weekend. Well, that's to you. But for most of us in the college football world, the biggest game of the weekend is number 1 Clemson on the road in South Bend at number 4 Notre Dame. 5 versus 8 is not as good as 1 versus 4. And Grace is here to help us properly prepare for this matchup. One big thing you noticed when I said episode 149, you know the next number is episode 150. That is on Monday. We have a phenomenal guest lined up for that. As you know, normally on Mondays I am solo, but with this being a monumental episode for the podcast, I said, why don't I back away and let somebody else fill this airspace? So we have a phenomenal guest, episode 150. Greg Doyle, sports columnist for the Indianapolis Star, was with us, did a phenomenal job. Got another phenomenal guest coming up on Monday. You will not want to miss it. With today being Thursday, you know we got to get our picks off. But before we do that, well, I got to let you know what games we're picking for the weekend, air the interview, then at the end come back and let you know who the winners I am picking for each game. So tonight in college football, BYU at Boise State's one of the games on Saturday. Arizona at USC, kicking off the Pac-12 season. Michigan at Indiana, a bigger test for the Wolverines than they think. Florida in a neutral field game against Georgia. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Clemson going on the road to face number 4 Notre Dame. In the NFL, Packers at the 49ers tonight. On Sunday, Ravens at Colts. Might be, and as the kids say, low-key might be the biggest game of the day. Seahawks at the Bills, Saints at the Buccaneers. And then Monday night in the nightcap, not sure how great this game's going to be, Patriots at the Jets. Let's go ahead and take a trip to Clemson, South Carolina to enjoy my fun conversation with Miss Grace Raynor, Clemson football beat writer for The Athletic. And joining us once again, she was here back in the summer, I think it was June, previewing the season for Clemson. And now right smack dab in the heart of it is Grace Raynor covers Clemson football for The Athletic. Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jay. How are you doing?
Doing very well, very well. It is Notre Dame week, but unfortunately, just like against Boston College, Clemson will be without their quarterback, their signal caller. Can you explain to not just myself, but so many other people, what the ACC protocol is, how he's doing, and when we may see Trevor step on the field again?
Sure. So the protocol is that when someone tests positive, they're going to be in isolation for 10 days. We know that Trevor was symptomatic because both Clemson and Trevor acknowledged that he had relatively mild symptoms, but they were there. So his positive test was on Wednesday of last week. So his 10-day isolation period, if he was not symptomatic on the 10th day, would be lifted by Saturday for the Notre Dame game. And so even though Dabo Swinney expects Trevor to be out of isolation and is hoping that Trevor can travel with Clemson, he can't play because he has to go through this protocol that's called the reacclimatization period, which includes a really thorough cardiac evaluation that he has to have before he can get back into team activities and practice and all that stuff. So in talking with a Clemson spokesman, with the Clemson athletes that have had COVID-19 in the past, 2 to 3 days for that reacclimatization period has been considered fast. And so it just kind of all depends on the athlete and their specific recovery and their body and stuff like that. But 2 to 3 days is considered fast. So just the timing of it, even if he was lifted on day 10 for Saturday, the timing of needing this cardiac exam. It's just the game's too soon for that. And then also you have just the fact that, Trevor wouldn't have practiced all week. He'd be looking at almost 2 weeks of no football.
So can the cardiac testing, could that be done during the self-isolation, or is that after?
That is after. Yep. It has to come after the 10 days.
Okay. How is he how is his personality, spirits and character, say character, but is he down and out of it, or is he still upbeat and helping his players in the best way he can while being isolated, prepare for the game this weekend?
I think it's both. I mean, we haven't talked to him since he tested positive. He did
Okay.
send out a tweet saying that, he was crushed. He wasn't going to be able to be there with his team. I know that he did Zoom in to talk to the team on Friday night before they played Boston College on Saturday. He and DJ Uiagalelei touched base really all week. He told DJ on Thursday, which was when DJ found out he would be starting, please call me with any questions. He sent him another text message on Saturday morning. So he's still been very hands-on. And I think that he, as the leader and the heart and soul of this team, he's recognized that he can still play a role from isolation. But I think the teammate in him, the competitor in him is obviously pretty devastated.
Okay. We're going to take a big scope at Clemson football, then come back to this weekend's game. If someone were to ask you to describe Clemson's team this year, offense, defense, doesn't matter what aspect, how would you describe it to someone that knows nothing about them?
Man, I mean, I would say, first of all, on defense, you got to start with Brent Venables and the coordinator, because the fact that this Clemson defense has been as dominant as it has, having lost all the starters from the national championship game, and then they're continuing to win games. Just this Saturday, they didn't have James Skalski, they didn't have Mike Jones Jr., they didn't have Tyler Davis. Those are 3 defensive starters. They're 3 of your best players on defense. So I would say Clemson's defense is bend, not break. They got challenged early against Boston College. Virginia had a little bit of success against them, but they just seem to always figure it out. And that's why I think Venables is the best defensive coordinator in college football. So I'd say the defense is bend, don't break, and Venables kind of schemes things up. The offense, I would say, there's been questions about the offensive line in the run game. But I think the biggest thing that when we're talking about this Clemson offense right now, at least, is Clemson all year has said, no drop off. We expect no drop off from starters to reserves. And we have seen that in certain positions, but we did not see that in the most important position of all, which was quarterback. DJ had a sensational debut Saturday. So they're figuring it out. COVID is a thing that every team has to deal with. And certainly Clemson got hit at the worst position that you could get hit at. But here they are, they're 7-0. They're figuring it out.
Didn't they? And I think when we talked last time, or maybe it was right after, if my memory is working correctly, I think they had a big, a lot of players get it in June or July. Which am I correct with that?
Yes, there were the first. I think the first batch in June was about 23, and then we heard of 14 more. So it was, as the summer trickled on, it was about 40 players that Clemson had told us got this virus.
Okay, and I think it's just me thinking about how you can use that to prepare for the season. That may have, Grace, help them to kind of adjust on the fly then to say, maybe we know how to handle COVID in the off season. Maybe we can utilize that to properly prepare if someone gets it in the season. Would that be a good assumption that they use that to kind of help with what's going on right now?
I think that they knew as soon as everything started to kind of unfold that they were going to need to cross-train guys more than they ever have before. And I think that that's what's kept them kind of able to be, I don't want to say afloat, because they're not hanging on right now. I mean, they're still the number 1 team in the country. They're still 7-0. But they were very intentional all year long about, okay, we got to get our backup quarterback reps. We've got to make sure that we're splitting this. And so that if something happens, we're going to be ready to go. And so I think just what they learned from the summer with so many kids getting it was, okay, we got to have a plan, and cross training and getting the 2s works with the 1s more than ever, I think has been what's allowed them to come through this.
Okay. I don't know how I remember that, because this year's been such a blur, not just for you, but for me as well, just whatever I'm doing, because I'm doing so much right now. But that little tidbit about the off season and now, I do it possibly may have helped. I didn't even know about the cross training about the 2s and 1s and getting reps and things like that. But it is a great addition, and how you're just kind of rolling with the punches, whatever happens, kind of rolling with it, kind of like with James Skalski. I think I remember that in the beginning of the season, I think his name's Jake Venables. He
Hmm.
started for Skowski game one because Skowski was out, I think, the first half of the first game, but now he's a starter right now. What's it like for his dad, Brent, to see his son out there on the field?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool when you kind of talk to Brent because you do have defensive coordinator Brent Venables, but then you have dad Brent Venables, and he's got two kids on the team now, and both of them
Okay.
are making some pretty meaningful contributions. His second son Tyler is a freshman safety, and so I think it's been cool for Brent to enjoy this with his sons and to see their hard work come to fruition. But I also know that Brent's not the type of guy that's going to go any easier on them. He's not going to treat them any differently, and so just like everyone else, they get Coach Venables on the field, they get his intensity on the field, and then maybe off it, he's swinging by to say hello or checking in, being dad. But when it's football time, it's football time, and Brent does not make any. There's no question about that.
So there's no chance of him like being like a softie on the field with his boys and like giving them like a little leeway when he wouldn't give other players, or is he always hard the entire time?
Yeah, I don't think he gives him any leeway. Honestly, if I had to guess, I would guess that he might be even harder on them just to make sure that he's, making it clear that there will be no different set of standards for his sons versus everyone else. But I mean, they're both really good football players. They were both really good high school football players. They deserve every second to be there that they're on the field. I mean, they're it was funny listening to Dabo kind of talk about them. Tyler, the second one, is more like Brent. He said
Okay.
Tyler
Okay.
is like Tasmania everywhere, just super wired, really intense. Jake, the older one who's going to be starting in place of Skowski again, is a little more reserved, a little more quiet.
Skowski's out again, it sounds like. Who else may be out this weekend?
Yeah, so Skowski's out. That's a big one. Mike Jones Jr., the starting Stam linebacker, was day-to-day last week, and he ended up not going against Boston College. So I don't know kind of where that stands, but I know Clemson obviously would love to have him back. Wide receiver Frank Ladson was unavailable against Boston College. Dabo Swinney does expect him to be back, so I'll keep my eye on that. And then I think the big question that we all have is Tyler Davis, just kind of where he is. This is a guy that had a MCL injury early in the season and then had just come back and played a few games. And then Dabo said he just got rolled up on in practice. I guess it was Wednesday, October 21st. And so
Okay.
Dabo said he's progressing well, and hopes sooner rather than later, but we don't have a specific timeline. But that's obviously a big one for sure.
Okay, I know I've been jumping around a little bit, but I want to stick on the offense for these next two players.
Sure.
DJ, I'm going to not pronounce his last name. I've actually practiced that for like yesterday. I was practicing it, and this morning I was like, I want to try and say it. I probably will down the road. It rolls off the tongue once I start saying it five times in a row. But his performance, I had heard of this big 6'4", 250 quarterback. That's the backup for Clemson. I had heard about he may be good. I didn't expect him to be as poised as he was against Boston College. And even this morning, I went back and watched most of the game, kind of fast forward through a little bit. He was ready for the moment. He looked like a freshman, looked like a guy that was making his first start, but he didn't have the normal like first game issues or woes or problems where he's running for his life. He looked very, very comfortable. And they say that his dad's 400 pounds bodyguard. I'm like, I hear about all this stuff during the broadcast. And it may have helped him in like his upbringing and talking about how dad is and how dad has to be on his job and maybe you have to be like this on the football field. But in practice, are you guys able to see how he is on the field often? Like, is he like that in practice where he's just cool, calm, poised, like whatever's in front of me, I'm just ready to tackle it? Or does he get a little bit more sporadic and kind of like get frantic when there's a D lineman rushing at him?
From everything that we've heard from coaches, it's that cool, calm steadiness. From the very first day that DJ got on Clemson's campus as an early enrollee in January, it was pretty immediate when he started getting compared to Trevor and to Deshaun Watson, just in terms of his ability to process, his mentality, his the ease with which he picked up the offense, the poise. Nothing really rattles him. I think he's got this. First of all, I think he has a very cool California vibe, first of all.
Yeah,
Like, he just seems like someone who doesn't really get worked up about much, and I really appreciate that about him. But this was a guy that really right out of the gate, Dabo had said the difference between DJ and Trevor and Deshaun is DJ 6'4", 250 pounds. It's like physically, there's a big difference, but mentally, he was right there with Trevor and Deshaun. And I think it's fitting that, after Saturday, there's only 3 freshman quarterbacks in Clemson history who have ever won their starting debut at quarterback: Deshaun, Trevor, and DJ.
Oh my. It's like back to back to back. Well, almost. I know Trevor Lawrence did start his freshman year first game, but it's almost like back to back to back where you guys have Dabo happens to find these guys, these quarterbacks that are elite at high school, and then come to Clemson. They're like, hey, Dabo, I know there's a guy in front of me that's really good, but I want to come play with you and have you groom me and have you help me develop as a quarterback. This weekend, is he? I know it's Monday, but is he nervous about playing Notre Dame?
He didn't seem to be super nervous, so it was kind of crazy how it unfolded with the way that the news conferences were going on after Boston College game. Dabo was in one room, DJ was in another, and Dabo in his room had just announced Trevor is not going to be playing against Notre Dame. So DJ was told, maybe he knew, I don't know, but someone asked him about it in real time. Hey, Dabo just said 2 minutes ago, you're up. And he was very cool, very chill. He's like, okay, well, I'll start watching film on Sunday. I don't know a ton about them. I know they're a great team. I know that he had felt like getting that first start against Boston College at home had definitely helped and sort of gotten him into a little bit of a rhythm. But, DJ played at a really big high school program. His high school program won the high school equivalent of a national championship. So he's not, he played on ESPN in high school. He's not new to the spotlight and the big games. And so I think that he'll be ready. And I think, for us to have seen what he did on Saturday with basically one practice and one walkthrough, I'm really excited to see, all right, what does a full week of DJ in practice look like? Obviously they won't practice Tuesday because of the election, but I think he'll be ready. And he sounded like he was very calm enough for the challenge.
He did. And I'm a very critical evaluator, not just here with this podcast, but other things I do. I'm very, very critical. And so I wasn't just looking at like his play as far as, drop back the pass and he makes this good pass here, very good. But I was really curious when I think he was down 18 at one point, Clemson was against Boston College. He wasn't rattled. He wasn't afraid for the moment. And it could be that stuff from high school that you mentioned, but it's almost, I didn't know he was from California. So that California vibe, cool, that cool guy aspect that was kind of shown, put out there for everyone to see on display against Boston College. Because I was kind of nervous. I was off and on watching the game on Saturday, and I was kind of nervous. I heard they're down 18 points. Clemson doesn't get down that much to anybody. And I think it was the first deficit this year. So I know that with that, I think, was that correct? That was the first deficit?
I think it would have been. Trying to think. I'll need to go back, but I do know this. It was the largest home comeback victory in school in program history.
Program history?
18 points. Largest home comeback.
My guess, and this is just me going out on a limb, I'm going to predict, and this is kind of makes me nerve-wracking knowing that the game's like 5 days away, but I'm predicting that he'll have a big game because of this is like the COVID effect. You're not going to have the full stadium in South Bend and Notre Dame, so you're not going to have the 70,000 fans yelling and screaming at him when he's on the field. But it's just his personality, and just from what I've seen, just from one game, and I don't want to take a snapshot of one game and say that's how he's going to be his whole entire career. But I think the moment, even though it's going to be bigger, I don't think it's going to be too big for him. And it's also going to be, it also helps that he has a guy behind him and Travis Etienne, who's breaking records, seems like every single week. He continues to get better. How would you say he's able to do that game after game after game, just continue to wow people?
Travis is, I think that when I look back on all the Clemson players I've ever covered, just watching Travis's career develop will be one of the coolest things I think I've ever seen. I mean, this is a guy who came in as a fourth string freshman in 2017. And I remember it like it was yesterday, just busted open an 81-yard touchdown run at Louisville when he was supposed to hit the A gap. And he gets on the bus and he apologizes to Tony Elliott, Clemson's running backs coach.
He apologized?
And he apologized because he was supposed to hit the A gap and he went down the sideline. Right. And Tony started laughing. And so, so I think we all knew when Travis was a freshman, okay, this kid has crazy speed. This is a dude we need to watch. And then as he started to develop into his sophomore and junior year, he had never really had to catch the ball in high school. It's just not really something he was ever asked to do. And pass protection was not something he was super refined in. So we start to see him kind of make some progress in pass protection his sophomore year. We makes a little bit of progress in catching the ball his junior year, but, still kind of struggles with some drops. And then all of a sudden you look up his senior year at a game like Saturday and he's running routes. He's like he's one of DJ's go-to downfield threats. I mean, he had 7 catches for 140 yards. If you're just looking at this box score and you don't know anything about Clemson football or anything about who plays what position, you probably think Travis Etienne's a wide receiver. I mean, he just, coming back his senior year, it was really important to him that he develop fully into a more versatile running back, so that in the NFL he could be a multi-tool weapon. And he had kind of gotten like a second round grade, and this was his mission all along. But man, just to see him and just how versatile he's become and how dangerous he's become when defenses have to now respect him vertically. I mean, he's just, I think he's the best running back in college football. I think he'll be a star in the NFL. But it's been really neat to watch him, incrementally take these steps, and all of a sudden you look up and holy cow, he's the ACC's all-time leading rusher.
I was a play on the right side. I think the ball may have been in the middle of the field, but I think it may have been a play action pass. And then I see Travis Etienne go out to the right, and then he catches the ball from DJ, and it was like nobody could get him at all. Like up the sidelines, his speed. And I know he's very elusive. He can slip tackles like it's nobody's business. Like he does it like it's a walk in the park to him. Like, oh, you want to tackle me? No, you can't. I'm going to slip out of it and run to the outside. So he does that very well. But I think it's his hands have improved. His route running has improved. But there's track speed. There's like that football speed. I don't know which one is the best way to describe him because he's a little bit of both. But he gets that ball and he is just gone. And it's almost like a guy running from a dog. You have a dog behind you, and he's like, oh, you're the dog. I want to run away. That's the way it seems like to me because he is just out of here every single time. Can he get better?
Yeah, I mean, I do think he will get better, and I think that that's a scary thought if you're on the opposing end of that.
I was wondering what you would say.
Like, I just think, I mean, you're right. He has that speed that you're right. Like, is it track speed? Is it football speed? I don't know what the word is for it. I know he's the fastest person I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I feel really confident in saying that. I don't think I've ever seen someone run that fast. But yeah, I mean, I think he is going to continue working on being a threat in the passing game. I think he'll continue working on his pass protection. And then thinking about like, okay, what's the next step for him is something that's kind of hard to wrap your head around when it seems like he has the whole skill set right now. But yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think he's going to get any worse. I think he's just going to keep building and building and building, working and working and working. And then all of a sudden you're going to look up, and I think this is the type of guy that's going to have a long career in the NFL. We know running backs obviously are a little vulnerable at that position, but I think he has all the tools anyone could ever want.
On the defensive side of the ball, I'll ask about Bryan Bresee in a second because I remember you mentioned him early in the offseason. But aside from him, what defensive players should fans keep their eyes on this week going into the biggest game of the season? Say, highlight, it could be 5. It doesn't really matter. I don't care how many players it is, but who should fans keep their eyes on this weekend?
I would say watch both of the safeties, Nolan Turner and Landon Sanders. Nolan's got 3 career interceptions, he had 3 career interceptions coming into this season. He now has 3 just this year. I mean, 3 of his 6 career picks are in 2020. So he just knows where to be at all times. He's a redshirt senior. He knows this system really well. I would watch him. Landon Sanders is the fastest guy on the defense. When you talk about people that maybe might be able to challenge Travis in foot race, it seems like Landon's getting the nomination. So I would watch him. In that secondary, I'd also watch Andrew Booth Jr. I'm sure you've seen his pass breakups go viral. That one-handed interception against Virginia was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. And then within the D-line, I would say watch Miles Murphy. He's another true freshman. He's a defensive end. He and Bresee were both 5 stars. He stepped into a really big role. And, Clemson's going to be without Xavier Thomas in the first half because of that targeting call against Boston College. So this D-line could be looking a little thin depending on where Tyler Davis is in his recovery. So I would say, along with Bresee, keep your eyes on Miles.
A thin D line going up against one of the best O lines in the country can be very, very scary. There's a freshman 5-star, like you mentioned, Bryan Bresee. I believe he started 5 games this year, if my calculations are correct. One of my buddies, who's an Ohio State Buckeye fan, I said, "Hey man, you better look out for this Bryan Bresee guy." And I mentioned this to him over the weekend because I was watching some of the games. I was like, he's killing it. And my buddy was like, "Oh no, Jay, I knew about him in the offseason. He's big in recruiting." He's like, no. Ohio State wanted him. They didn't get him. He went to Clemson. He's a problem. And he's a huge problem. But I know it's Dabo. I know Dabo finds these guys. I don't know how he persuades them to go from, say, an Ohio State or Alabama or a Clemson, because all 3 schools, they provide something that's different, but also unique. You're going to a top school, you're going to get developed, and you're going to have a chance to go to the NFL and win conference and national championship every year. Like that's the pedigree, and that's how prestigious those schools are. But Bresee is there in Clemson and following up this line of D-line play and great defenses that Clemson has had, he falls right into that, and he continues to impress on day number one. What were some of the conversations the coaches had in the preseason about him, and how have those changed in regards to his play this season?
Yeah, I mean, Dabo has said in the past that, there's just certain recruits that you get, he calls it, no assembly required, just like ready to go right out of the box. And Brian and Miles, DJ fall into that category. There's the developmental guys that you're going to bring along, and then there's the guys that just show up and boom, they're there. And so Brian was one of those guys from the get-go. Obviously, he was learning the defense and the speed of it, and Brent Venables' scheme is not an easy one to pick up. It's very chaotic, very hectic. But really, he's just been progressing. And they had really high expectations for him coming into the season. And then obviously Tyler Davis goes down, and all of a sudden, this is a guy you really need to step up for you right now. And he just seems like he's getting better every single week. So I think they knew what they were getting, but also wanted to see it kind of unfold in front of their eyes once the game was live, once the stage was set. And now all of a sudden, you're going into game 8, and yeah, your D line is pretty thin, but I think if you're Clemson, you feel really good about the fact that, like you said, Brian's got 5 starts in 7 games. This is not someone you're just throwing into the mix, against Notre Dame and saying, good luck, kid. He's got some experience now, so I think they feel good about that.
They do, and I'm confident in him. I like watching O-line and D-line play. It's kind of like not my calling card, but it's one of those things that I enjoy watching. Because those battles are intense. And I think this weekend against Notre Dame, it's the biggest test, not just for him, but for both teams. And it's going to be one of the best games we're going to see all season. Now, granted, you may see conference championship games may be as good. You may get some rivalry games down the road for other schools that'll be as good. But I think so far, and even projecting down the road, this game is probably going to be one of the best games we're going to see this year at all. Grace, thanks so much for coming back on. Could you let people know where they can connect with you on social media and also read some of your work as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, first of all, for having me. I always appreciate talking shop with you. But I'm on Twitter, GM Raynor, Raynor, and then all of my work is just on the Clemson page of theathletic.com. So just head on over to college football, click Clemson, and all your Notre Dame Clemson content will be right there.
It will be. And I will say, guys, check her out preparing for the game this weekend. You may not be a Notre Dame or Clemson fan, just want to prepare for a big game. Read her stuff. She's very, very good. I was reading the article I think you put out this morning, and I was like, there's like 10 different points. I was like, this thing is long. I'm not a reader like that, but I like reading good stuff. So I'm just reading. Like I just keep scrolling. But no, you do a phenomenal job. Thank you for coming back on. I want to say quickly, I practiced his name before.
Okay, I'll hear it.
DJ Uiagalelei.
Almost. Uiagalelei.
Lele. Okay, so Tessitore was okay. I thought Tessitore said it wrong on the broadcast on Saturday, but he was correct. But I tried. I get it next time.
It's tricky. It's hard. I mean, it honestly took Dabo phonetically like saying it to the press for me to get it. Like Dabo has DJ in his phone as Uiagalelei. And that's the only reason why I know is because Dabo, I felt like, gave us a hooked on phonics lesson in the press conference.
During the game, they had DJ say it himself, pronounce his name, and then there's videos on YouTube of people pronouncing his name as well.
Yep.
And the guy on YouTube is wrong. I was like, how do you have a video get views on YouTube and you're wrong? But that's the way the cookie crumbles. Grace, thanks so much for coming back on. Have you on down the road at some point, not sure when, but we'll discuss this again at some point. Always enjoyed you coming on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Uiagalelei. Try it, guys. Go ahead. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. Uiagalelei. It's difficult. One of those weird names. I can say Giannis Antetokounmpo easily. Tua Tagovailoa never really had a problem with that. But DJ's name definitely had trouble with that. Let's get these picks off and then wrap up today's show. Tonight, BYU over Boise State on Saturday. I am going with Indiana with the upset at home in Bloomington over the Wolverines. Jim Harbaugh lose this game, the hot seat gets even hotter. Also, USC will beat Arizona State. I got Georgia over Florida, and I'm going Notre Dame with the upset over Clemson in South Bend. In the NFL, the Packers over the 49ers. Those injuries the 49ers have that's just derailing them. That's almost demoralizing. You look at their injury report and list and how many players are not available. Man, that mentally wears you down. On Sunday, I am going to go Seahawks over the Bills, Bucks over the Saints. I'm holding out one game for Sunday to the last. On Monday night, Patriots over the Jets. And the biggest game of the weekend, I believe, I'm going with the Colts with the upset over the Ravens. I truly believe that Colts defense is way too good. And we have seen Lamar Jackson struggles to beat you with his arm alone. And I believe that'll be on Front Street this weekend. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can also send all of your emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for a new podcast to listen to come across this one. Remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode number 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 149 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I will see you next time.